Land Cruiser 100 series. This is the HDJ 101 and it's a 1998 year model. It has the 1HD FTE engine and it has a very interesting problem. Customer complaint is the cluster goes off when you turn on the engine. So let's see what it's doing. That's a key on. See that the cluster comes on. We start the car and the cluster goes off. Everything is dead. No indicator, no lights. Okay, I can see there's an ABS light there. And when you put the car off, put the key back on, everything comes to life. You can see the 12-volt indicator and everything. So let's do that again. So where are you going to start with this? Most people will come and put a diagnostic scanner here and scan the car. Well, this cluster does not have any communication, any data communication. So what are you scanning? What are you checking? So this video is to show people that diagnosis has nothing to do with you bringing a scanner. That's just a small part of it. I want to go to a wiring diagram and I want to see how this cluster gets its powers and grounds. So this is the wiring diagram pulled up. The instrument cluster gets its voltage from several places. First is this 15 amp gauge fuse, and that supplies the instrument cluster on pin A15, and that's when you turn the key to the ignition position. That's key on position. Then there is another power feed here on B14, and that comes when the key is in the accessory position, and it comes from the 10 amp mirror fuse. And then we have another power feed here on B4 that comes from the 10 amp ignition fuse, and it's just checking if it's the same as this. It's not. So you've got another ignition signal and it gets its power from here, but this one doesn't really power the instrument cluster as such. It looks like it only powers the charge fuse, the charge light. So I'm not going to really bother with that one. This one I can see goes directly into the control circuit, and this one also goes into, doesn't say where it goes, so which means it goes somewhere to the board. So I'm interested in these two power feeds, A15, B14. So our grounds, it is here on B6. This is the 1HD FTE, so it connects to the engine block through connector WD41. This looks like it's a junction connector, and it's a sky blue wire. By the way, all these are sky blue. SB is sky blue, so that's a sky blue wire, it's a sky blue wire, sky blue wire. Then we have another auxiliary ground here on B1, and that connects to a bracket ground. Now this says signal, so if it's a signal ground, it means it actually provides, the cluster is the one that provides this ground out. So I am not really interested in this one. I want the main ground that supplies the cluster, so we're going to stick with B6. So A15, B14, B6. Connector A and B, IDs are down here. Connector A is W19, connector B is W20. They are identical. As far as where they're located, here we have W19, W20, W21, W22 instrument cluster. And this is in quadrant A11 and B12. So this is the general component location. These are our quadrants. This is A, B, C, and this is 1, 2, 3. So let's look for A11. So it's on the next page. A11. So those are our two connectors. W19, W20. That's here. So that's actually just at the instrument panel. So if I zoom in here, so it's the first two connectors here, and these are the pin IDs. So what I want to do is remove the instrument cluster, and we're going to go into these two, get our two powers from this connector, get our ground from this connector, hook up the scope, see what's going on there. Instrument cluster is removed. That's connector A, B, connector C, and D. We're not doing anything with these two connectors. Our connectors of interest are A and B. We have the picoscope set up, and here are our connections. Channel A, we have B14, that's accessory power. Channel B, we have A15, and that is the ignition power. And channel C, we have B6, and that is our ground. All probed. Now, to make this a valid test, I need to connect back the instrument cluster. All tests for voltage should be on the normal state. I have gotten burnt many times doing voltage checks with things disconnected. You may have voltage, then it drops when stuff is connected. So let me put back the instrument cluster, and then we will put the key on and start the car. Just a comment before I put back the instrument cluster. There are a lot of people who say that we don't need wiring diagrams and we can do diagnosis without wiring diagrams. What are you going to do with these wires? These are all the same color of wires. All the same color of wires. They're all sky blue. Well, they're meant to be sky blue. They're faded off because the car is very old. But these are all the same color of wires. You can see, let me zoom in here. All those wires are exactly the same. Exactly the same there. Exactly the same here. How, pray, are you going to have any idea of what these wires do and where they go? You need to have a wiring diagram, and that's why I use them. Cluster is back in the car, and our scope is running. Let's see what we have. Stick a key. Oh, by the way, in order to get this cluster out, the steering needs to be dropped. That's why it looks like that. If you attempt to fiddle with this cluster and get it out with the steering there, there's a big potential of you cracking this bezel. And this cluster is extremely expensive. Used, they go for about 60,000 shillings, believe it or not. And I don't even know what the price is new, but they're really expensive. This is the Optitron cluster. It's the premium version. So let's put the key in. Key is in the ignition. Dinger is going, and I already see a problem. This car looks to have a bad ground. The green channel is elevated, and that's supposed to be the ground. It's not supposed to do that. Let's put the key in accessory position. Key in accessory position. We have our accessory power on channel A. Ignition position. That is our ignition power on channel B. And let's start. That's running. Oh boy, look at that. So let me put that off and stop the scope. And let's see what we have. Here's our capture, and we have a bad ground straight off the bat. Let's do some measurements. Channel A, when the car is running, we have 11.8 volts. That is low. That's quite a voltage drop. I need to check whether this charging system is working. Channel B, we have 12.3 volts, 12.04 volts. The car is running. But here is our problem, and it's going to be on channel C. Channel C, we have 8.24 volts on that ground. This is a bad ground. We can't have a ground elevated that much. So if your ground is 8.2 volts and your power feed is 12 volts, that means your cluster is literally running on only less than 3 volts differential. So you have, this cluster is running on 3 volts. I saw the problem right here when it was dinging, and when the dinger was on, this ground was being elevated, and I could tell we have a bad ground straight away. So what I want to do is, do we have another problem with the power? Do we have another problem with the cluster? I don't know. But what I can do is, I want to feed this with a ground. So I'm just going to take the ground on my scope and connect it right into this channel, and I want to see if our cluster will wake up properly. Let me set that up. So there's my ground signal on channel C. I've just piggybacked a ground cable on that wire, and it comes out here and it's connecting to my ground rail. So I'm giving that a ground, and now I want to see how the cluster will behave. So I'm going to start this car again. Here's a key. First we're just going to put the key in, let the dinger come on, and look at the ground. There's a key in, dinger is on, look at that ground. It's no longer elevating. This is going to work. So key in the accessory position, your power in the accessory position, still have a very good ground. Key in the on position. In the on position, cluster is lit, ground is still good, and let us start. Here we go, we're running. Very nice. Cluster is stable, and we have a tachometer, we have everything running. We have our ABS light. That's a different problem. This is going to be a fix. Once we fix that ground, we should have a proper fix. So just to make sure, I'm going to come here to my ground rail, and I'm going to remove this ground while the car is running. So I'm going to focus back on the meter. 3, 2, 1. That's the ground pulled off. There we go. Cluster is dead again. On the scope we have an elevated ground, and we are back to our same condition. So we have a bad ground. Let's see where that ground is located and see why we do not have it. So this ground is on the engine block DE, because we have the 1HD FTE engine, and we have that going to a junction WD1, then it goes to the instrument cluster. I don't think we have a problem here at the engine block. Reason is, this ground I'm familiar with. It serves quite a number of stuff, including the engine computer, and this car is actually running. So I want to first try here. I'm going to get this disconnected and see if we have a good ground here. If we have a good ground here, then we have an open between WD1 and the instrument cluster. If you don't have a ground here, then I'm going to chase the engine block. So WD1 is here on the component locations. It's on quadrant A2. Let's go to our quadrant. This is A2, and I'm not seeing it. WD1. It's not on A2. Get it together, Toyota. It's on B1. Actually, it's on C1. Here's WD1. And that's here behind the glove compartment, and we have it here. So let's open that glove compartment and see what's behind it. Here's a glove box removed, and that is my WD1. Check this out. This is exactly how I found it. This connector is not plugged in all the way. Look at this. This is not plugged in all the way. Oh boy. So let me plug this in. I don't know if it's broken or... No, it's not. Amazing. So this connector wasn't plugged in all the way. So I think it was partially plugged in and must have fallen out due to vibration. This car is used for off-roading a lot. So I don't know what to say. Let's go look at our cluster now. My goodness. So these are ground plugged in. I have removed my accessory power accessory ground, sorry, that I was connecting from my ground rail. So now the cluster is getting the ground directly from the car. There's a scope running. We start with key in the accessory position, dinger going, good ground, very nice. Accessory power, beautiful. Ignition power, cluster is up, and we are running well so far. We start. And that's the car running, and we have cluster, we have good ground, and that's just beautiful. So this car is fixed, no parts required. So there you go. No scanner, just a good wiring diagram and a good workflow, and we've managed to fix this car. I'm sure the owner will be very, very happy about that. Amazing. He removed the radio there. That's not the problem. So we're just going to put back the glove box and put back our cluster and put back our steering, and that's it for this car. Fix 100 series Land Cruiser, no cluster when car is running. Again, diagnosis is meant to be a evidence-based process. Plugging in a scanner will not have helped you in this case. Most people would have changed this cluster. This would have still yielded the same problem. And then without a wiring diagram, what are you going to do? You're going to butcher this harness, trying to see what are you going to look for. You're going to look for powers, you're going to look for grounds, you're going to strip cables and try and find. But even if you find a power, what's it supposed to be for? From the wiring diagram, there are several powers. There's some for the bulbs, there's some for the cluster. You wouldn't know. This is what good diagnosis is, and this is what I do, and this is why, again, I'm the best at this. That's a fix, and See you next time.